Once upon a time, in a land where forests whispered secrets and rivers carried songs, there was a small kingdom known as Lyriania. It was said that Lyriania was unlike any other place in the world, for in its valleys and hills, magic grew like the wildflowers, unbound and untamed. Here, everything glowed just a little brighter, the sun in the sky, the stars at night, and the hearts of those who dared to love deeply. In the heart of the kingdom there stood two villages separated by a dense, ancient forest known as the Elderglen. One village, Saradel, was a bustling hub of music and markets. The other, Althera, was a quiet haven of scholars and dreamers. And in these two villages lived two remarkable women. In Saradel there was Lyra, a fiery blacksmith known for her strength and her laughter, both of which seemed to ring like the very steel she forged. Althera, on the other hand, was home to Elise, a quiet herbalist who tended to the forest with the devotion one might show to an old friend. Lyra was bold and brave, with hands that shaped swords and hearts alike. Her forge, warm and inviting, had become the soul of the village, where people came not just for tools but for her stories of adventure and her unwavering kindness. Lyra's presence was a beacon of strength and joy in Saradel, where her laughter and stories drew people together, forging a community as strong as the steel she worked with. People came not just for tools, but for the warmth of her forge and the tales that filled the air, tales of courage and kindness that inspired all who heard them. Althera, on the other hand, was home to Elise, a quiet herbalist who tended to the forest with the devotion one might show to an old friend. Tall and willowy, with hair that shimmered like a river at dusk, Elise moved through the woods as if she belonged to them completely. People whispered that she spoke the language of plants, that the trees bent towards her like she was their sister. Lyra and Elise had never met. They lived their lives on opposite sides of the Elderglen, and though the forest connected their villages, it also divided them. The forest was unkind to strangers, filled with twisting paths and illusions, and few dared tread its shadows. But as it often goes in the greatest of stories, fate found a way to bring them together. One day, dark rumors began to spread across Lyriania. People spoke of a blight creeping through the kingdom, a strange sickness that drained the colors from the world. Crops withered, rivers dried, and even the sky seemed dimmer, its blue veiled in perpetual gray. It was said that the magic of the Elderglen, ancient and wild, was fading, and with it, the life of the land. Both Lyra and Elise felt the pull to do something. Lyra burned with determination, her forge hammer striking as she crafted supplies for the journey she knew she must take. Elise, too, prepared, though in her quiet way. She gathered leaves and herbs into bundles, whispering their names as she tucked them into a basket. Though they began their journeys from opposite sides of the forest, it was inevitable that their paths would cross. For the heart of the Elderglen was a place of ancient power, where a great tree grew, a tree said to guard the world's magic. Slowly the forest drew Lyra and Elise together as if it knew they were destined to meet. It was on the third day of her journey that Lyra first spotted Elise. Draped in a cloak the color of moss, Elise moved through the forest like a shadow. Lyra stepped forward, her heavy boots crunching on the leaves, and called out, "Are you friend or foe?" "Friend, I hope, but you shouldn't be here. The forest doesn't take kindly to wanderers." And yet here you are. The sunlight that filtered through the treetops caught Elise's face, and for a moment, Lyra forgot how to speak. She had never seen anyone who carried such grace, such quiet strength. The forest didn't seem to reject her. If anything, it seemed to hold its breath around her, as if waiting. "I'm searching for the heart of the forest," Lyra declared. "Something has poisoned it, and I mean to set it right." Elise nodded slowly, understanding the shared purpose. "Then we're here for the same reason. The Elderglen is unwell, but it won't make the journey easy, especially for two strangers." Lyra grinned, her optimism shining through. "Well, then we'll just have to become something other than strangers." And so they walked together, their footsteps marking the beginning of a journey that would test their resolve and forge their bond. At first, their conversations were sparse, cautious as a newly lit flame. But as the hours turned to days, the forest's challenges forced them to lean on one another. When clever illusions tried to divide them, Elise's knowledge of natural signs kept them on track. When shadows clawed at their path, Lyra's strength and courage held them steady. As they journeyed deeper, their bond grew. Lyra admired the way Elise moved through the world. how her quiet voice seemed to soothe even the harshest storms. And Elise found herself enchanted by Lyra's laughter, which felt like sunlight breaking through the darkest clouds. On their final day in the forest, they reached the heart of Elderglen. Standing before them was the great tree, but its once magnificent branches were withered and gray, its roots tangled with thorns. At its base stood a figure cloaked in darkness, its shadowy form twisting like smoke. It turned as they approached, its voice a cruel whisper. "You've come too late," it hissed. "The magic is already mine." Elise stepped forward, her voice clear and unwavering. "You've taken what doesn't belong to you." The figure laughed, a sound that cracked like breaking glass. "And what will you do about it? You're nothing but a wanderer and a warrior. The forest is mine now." Lyra's grip tightened on the hilt of her sword as she stepped beside Elise. "You might have stolen the forest," she said, "but you forgot one thing. We're stronger together." And with that, they fought not with brute force alone, but with the balance they had found in each other. Elise called upon the magic of the plants, weaving roots and vines to hold the shadow at bay, while Lyra's blade burned with the light of her courage, slicing through the darkness. They moved as though they had been born for this moment, two halves of the same soul. When the final blow was struck, the shadow dissolved, its scream fading into silence. The great tree shuddered, and a pulse of light spread outward, restoring color and life to the Elderglen. The forest breathed again. As the magic settled, Lyra turned to Elise, her chest heaving. "You know," she said, grinning despite the exhaustion, "I think I like you." Elise laughed softly, her eyes bright with relief. "Good," she said, "because I think I like you too." And so the two women returned to their villages, but they didn't remain apart for long. With the Elderglen healed, they found themselves drawn back to its heart again and again, not out of duty, but out of love. For in the heart of the forest they had found something even more powerful than magic: each other. From that day forward, the people of Cyrodiil and Althera spoke of the two women who saved the forest and the land. But Lyra and Elise didn't care much for the stories. They were content to walk hand in hand beneath the trees, listening to the forest hum with life and love. And so they lived happily ever after, as all great loves should.